Snipes and Insights. It's May 6, 2025. I'm your host, Keith Kavanaugh, alongside Tyler Madarasz. And Tyler, I have one question for you. I need to know where you were watching the Leafs game last night because it only seems like they win when you're watching it on your buddy's couch.
Yeah, shout out to Jay Kahn, who I think just got off his show on NHL Network Radio. But yeah, Jay Kahn's couch is getting a workout. We are undefeated there when the Maple Leafs are playing, and had a quad screen of baseball going on. It was a pretty good sports night as round two got underway.
Yep, I love that. I mean, we had one game last night. It was the Leafs and the Panthers. A lot to unpack just in that one game alone. We'll take our best stab at it. Obviously, to me, the thing that everyone wants to talk about is the Anthony Stolarz injury, concussion situation, which is a serious matter. So, Seth, if we could roll the video here quick. It looked like he took a real hard shot from Sam Reinhart off the dome where his helmet came off. And that kind of seemed to be the first sign that he might have something. I was reading some articles from Chris Nowinski, who's a doctor who studied concussions thoroughly throughout NHL, NFL players. And he was saying how it was the shaking of the head that signaled it. But then obviously we had Sam Bennett run into Stolarz here. Then Stolarz ended up puking on the bench, taken to the hospital. He seems like he's okay today, was in good spirits. I saw some Maple Leafs beat writers say that some of the players talked to him. He seemed like he was doing better. So that's great to see. Tyler, I just want to know what your thoughts are on this. Sam Bennett did not receive a penalty on the play, did not get any supplemental discipline. I don't know the foundation of the concussion. It clearly seems like something serious happened. Joseph Woll had to come in and did a good job, but I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the first clip we saw there was actually the first shot of the game for the Florida Panthers. So, Keith, what a way to kind of feel your first puck and just take a shot right to the face by Sam Reinhart. So, tough way to kind of start the game with that being your first shot. And then, obviously, Sam Bennett going to the net later in the hockey game is just what Sam Bennett does best. He's getting to the blue paint. He's kind of just being a menace, which we expected him to be in this series and throughout the playoffs, like we saw him on the way to a Stanley Cup last year. But should it have been a 2-minute penalty for goaltender interference? Definitely. Should it have been a suspension? No. Sam Bennett, what he did to Anthony Stolarz isn't malicious. He's not trying to concuss his friend. He certainly wants to get under his skin and wants to win this series and get back to the Eastern Conference Final. But you don't think Sam Bennett's going to go out and absolutely just jam his elbow into the side of his Anthony Stolarz' head. So should have been a goaltender interference penalty, and we just hope Anthony Stolarz is okay. But as you say, Joseph Woll came in. He was pretty good, and the Leafs finally kind of have a capable 1B that could maybe win them a series.
Yeah, and I think to me, like, I agree with you. I don't think it should have been a suspendable play. And the discourse online just really takes it up a level when something like this happens, and it's in the playoffs, and it involves the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think Chris Pronger, the NHL Network's, newest guy, I think he's on your show. He's also coming over to ESPN, I think, the next couple of days. He had a great thread online of kind of just breaking down the entire situation as to why, he also kind of was not in the camp that it should have been a suspendable play. And Sam Bennett does have a reputation in the past, with his stuff with Marchand, with Matthew Nyes. So there is some of that factored into it. But then to your point too, like, he's just trying to get to a certain point. He's barely kind of in the crease. It didn't look malicious at all. And I think that it's clearly that it's just the way he plays. He plays with that little edge that teeters on is he going to cross the line or is he not going to cross the line? And that's the kind of player that people love in the playoffs if he's on your team and you hate to play against him.
Yeah, and this is all kind of going to be a funny situation if we get to July 1st and Sam Bennett ends up signing with the Toronto Maple Leafs, which a lot of people think that he might end up going to his home province. But yeah, hopefully he didn't mean to do it on purpose. Like, he probably at least just meant to get to the paint and maybe bump his buddy just a little bit, but he certainly didn't mean to send him out of the game, potentially give him a concussion, send him to the hospital. So we just hope Anthony Stolarz is okay. And like, he hasn't been ruled out of game 2 yet. Will he play? Probably not, just the way that he left that game. But hey, nothing could shock us in the postseason.
Nothing at all. And let's get to the good stuff, right? So the Maple Leafs come out on top, a 5-4 victory. They were up early, and then Florida kind of got a couple late, but then the Maple Leafs finished the deal. If we could get this Morgan Rielly goal, this was my favorite goal of the night. I just love to see Morgan Rielly, right? He was drafted by the Maple Leafs about 10 years ago, stayed with them through the good and the bad, and he gets this massive goal to put them up 3-1 at home in game 1. You can tell how excited he was when he finally got this, short side past Sergei Bobrovsky.
Yeah, it's good that he's scoring goals, Keith, because if you ask a lot of Maple Leafs fans around these parts, when you look at their 6 defensemen that have pretty much played the end of the regular season and into the playoffs, he's almost the 6th most reliable guy in your own zone. So it's a good thing that he's bringing a little offense. He scored the most goals as a defenseman in Leafs playoff history, which is a pretty crazy stat when they've had guys like Boreas Salming in their franchise. But Morgan Rielly's doing it on the offensive side, which is always a great thing because that's what they drafted him for. And the pass there that we didn't get to see was William Nylander just kind of feathering one right up to him. Nylander already had 2 goals in that game, and then all of a sudden picks up his 3rd point. He's leading the way with Kyle Connor and Mikko Rantanen now in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So Nylander with a big game. That was an absolutely huge goal by Rielly to just rip one by Bob. And it mattered because the Florida Panthers made it a 1-goal game at the end of the game.
And we'll see how the Panthers kind of respond to that in game 2. They're not the kind of team to just bend over and roll over. They're going to come out with a vengeance in game 2. They're going to want to bring this thing 1-1 going back to Fort Lauderdale in the series. Also, if we want to look at how they matched up, that was one thing I was looking at. One thing you were kind of looking at too. The Barkov line, Barkov's matched up a 9 out of his 14.5 5v5 minutes against Austin Matthews' line. And the Matthews line actually won those minutes pretty well. They had a 64.5% expected goal share, 2-0 on the actual score sheet. So good win for the Matthews line against Barkov yesterday. Your guy Belinskis, right? You were talking about, let's see how much the Matthews line can kind of get out against him. They were only able to get 1 minute and 7 seconds against Belinskis at 5-on-5. So I think that might be something in game 2 that if they want to, and it was funny too, because he actually ended up scoring a goal in the game. But if Matthews wants to, if they want to try and attack that third deep pair, I think they might want to do that a little bit more in game 3.
Yeah, it didn't really work out for Craig Berube, but as you say, Uvis Belinskis had an absolute rip of a shot. Like that was a beauty by Belinskis to beat Joseph Woll, and we might not even see him in the next game, Keith, because Aaron Ekblad's returning to the lineup. So whether it's Belinskis out or maybe Nate Schmidt out, he kind of made the most of his time in the lineup, and like it was a fun third period. Maybe not if you're a Maple Leafs fan because it got really, really close, but like the first 40 minutes were great. They'll probably have to work on a little power play stuff heading into game 2 because they went 0 for 5. But the team that we're used to seeing win hockey games, and especially last year on their way to a cup, the Florida Panthers kind of arrived in that third period, and we'll see if they can move that momentum into the next game tomorrow night.
And they switched Morgan Rielly towards the end of the game on that first power play unit. They had been going 5 forwards, but I think they wanted to play a little more defensively. And maybe that kind of contributed to the fact that the Maple Leafs were 0-5, but they cannot continue to have 0-4s on special teams if they want to win this series. I think that was a great first game, and I'm excited for game 2. We also had the draft lottery last night. The New York Islanders, as Tyler kind of predicted, kind of didn't predict that they get the first overall pick. I'm interested to see, do you think that they're going to draft the local Long Island boy, James Haggins, or do they go for the top defensive prospect, Matthew Schaefer, or maybe a Michael Misa in between the two of them?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I called it either. I just thought it would be cool if the Islanders would have won. It made it even cooler that Ken Morrow was there representing them. So I thought that was awesome. We had Ken Morrow join us like a couple weeks ago with his new book, and he's just such a good guy and such a legendary Islander. So it was awesome to see his reaction when the Islanders did win. I'm a sucker for these hometown things, like when a guy goes back to his hometown. So I'd love to see them draft James Haggins, but you got to think they need a D. Like they have so many great prospects in the pipeline. They traded for Callum Ritchie this season, who is absolutely crushing in the Ontario Hockey League. So you got to think they go for the defenseman. Matthew Schaefer looks like he's shaping up to be a number 1 D-man in the league. So you already have Noah Dobson there. You have some great pieces on Long Island. So you got to think they go with Schaefer.
And if you're following along with PuckPedia, they were live tweeting the entire draft lottery, running their simulations as we showed on the show yesterday. So they had a great piece on that, and now you can run all your mock drafts on there through the Puck GM feature. So if you want to get out there, see what you want to take, if you're the Islanders, maybe mock up some trades too. There's some rumors, going around. Maybe they try and move Noah Dobson and then take Schaefer and James Haggins. We'll see how all that plays out. We got a little ways until the NHL draft, but we do have 2 game 1s tonight for the second round. So let's get right into those games. The first game on the slate tonight is the Washington Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes, which to me feels like a series that no one's really talking about. They're talking about both the Western series. They're talking about the other series in the East. This is getting downplayed a little bit, and I think this has the potential to be a fireworks kind of series. Seth, if we can get the lineups and line combinations going for tonight, we're looking at Carolina, the road favorite tonight, minus 135 on the money line, with the Washington Capitals plus 115. The over-under is set at 6. If you want to take a look at the cool bet series odds for this series, Washington's an underdog at plus 141. Carolina's minus 172 favorite to take care of business. If we look at the lineups, not much surprising me all that much. It's the same group, both on the Carolina Hurricanes side and the Washington Capitals side, Protas is still slated on that fourth line, but there was Spencer Carberry said he's going to try and get him maybe, some first, second line minutes. So we'll see how that plays out. We got Freddie Anderson back in net. He was hurt in the Jersey series, but he's been practicing and he's confirmed for the game one start tonight against Logan Thompson, who's played great so far this season and in the playoffs. D pairs looking as expected. Anything catch your eyes on the lines?
Yeah, it's got to be Freddie Anderson, healthy enough to play. We chatted with him on Monday morning, and he seemed like a guy that was ready to get back into things. So not surprised that Rod Brind'Amour and the Canes are starting Frederik Andersen. He's their number one guy, and they're hoping he can take down Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals. But this is going to be a tough series for the Canes. Like, I don't know who you like. It's kind of weird to see them as a road favorite at -135. A little surprising to me. So Capitals fans are probably like, all right, like we'll be a home dog and hopefully win this series. But I'm excited for this one. As you say, not a lot of people are talking about it. Like Florida and Toronto is a pretty fun series. The ones in the West are obviously really fun. We're about to talk about a great matchup between Vegas and Edmonton, but I think I'm super excited for this series. And when you look at Alexi Protas, we've talked about him a lot. He wasn't in the lineup until late in the last series, but like, just start him on the first line in this game. I know he's probably going to end up moving up there, as you say, but like he was one of the best even strength players all season, just doing it all. You still don't know if he's at 100% with the skate cut to the foot. So maybe Spencer Carberry is just trying to get him a little less minutes and let that heal a little bit more. But excited to see what Protas can do if he gets to move up with Ovi and Strome. And we'll see what that Carolina Hurricanes team can do on the road. And maybe they do upset the Washington Capitals in game number one.
And to slightly counter that too, I think maybe it's also a reward to Anthony Beauvillier, who's slotted onto that first line real nice. He's made some great plays, some good puck retrievals, feeding Strome and Ovechkin. Like they're playing pretty well, so you don't want to shake things up if you don't need to. And you have that, in your back pocket. If things aren't going well, then you can move Alexi Protas up to that first line. Use it as like a little bit of a weapon, something that, is good for the playoffs. So I think that might be some of the logic behind it as well. I'm also interested to see how they kind of match up tonight. I assume that Spencer Carberry is going to try and have the Strome line avoid the Stahl line at all costs, but Jordan Stahl always finds his way to kind of play against the best forwards on the other team, especially with Washington having that last change at home ice. Also, a guy I look for this series to kind of take the step up if Washington wants to win is Connor McMichael. He had a really strong regular season like Alexi Protas did, and I think he's the kind of guy on that second line with Dubois to kind of push the narrative and take that step forward.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big Connor McMichael fan. I know Capitals fans are growing to love him really, really quickly, especially after the year that he had. So I love that. And what else I like for this game, because you said like maybe some people aren't getting excited about it, which is very true just from reading and listening to some people out there in the NHL circles. But like, give us an overtime thriller then in game one. Like, give us some excitement. Give us like a late tying regulation goal, but get us excited here in game one. But I'm super pumped up for Caps Canes, and we hope it goes 6 or 7.
100%. And I think a lot of that rides on which version of Freddie Andersen we get. Seth, if you can pull up the graphic, Freddie just signed a new contract. He actually took a discount on his previous deal. So he's at age 35 right now, so he's getting a little older. He's coming off a 2-year deal at $3.4 million, but then he just signed a 1-year deal for next season at $2.75 million. I think there's actually a stipulation on his no trade clause depending on how many games he's played, which is interesting. All the details are available on PuckPedia, but I think it's interesting. The Hurricanes also locked up Taylor Hall to a 3-year deal, a little over $9 million total a couple days ago. So the Hurricanes are one of the teams that are getting some business done during the postseason while they're still in it.
Yeah, gotta love Eric Tulsky giving us some things to talk about other than the product on the ice. But like you mentioned, Hall getting done. Frederik Andersen was one of those UFA goaltenders, Keith, where you're like, where's Frederik Andersen going to go? He's 35 years old. Like, what team can use him? And now that question is completely thrown out the window because Eric Tulsky's like, no, we're keeping him, and we're keeping the Kochetkov-Andersen tandem, which I really, really like. Like, you got to know that Frederik Andersen gets injured quite a bit, unfortunately. So to have a guy like Kochetkov there as his backup, pretty much as 1B, is a nice security blanket. But most likely will finish his career in Carolina, we hope, and love that Eric Tulsky's getting some business done during the playoffs.
100%. And I think maybe some of that had to do with how Eric Tulsky and the Hurricanes brass saw Freddie Andersen in round one. He had a 3-1 record, 1.59 goals against average, and a .936 save percentage. So very, very solid in that first round. If the Hurricanes want to advance to the conference finals, I think Freddie's going to need to be on his A game this series. And then one more game tonight. It's the first game of the Vegas-Edmonton series. I'm super excited for this one. If we want to pull up the lines and the lineup combos, we got the Edmonton Oilers as a slight underdog tonight, plus 114 on the money line. The Vegas Golden Knights are favored at minus 134. The over-under is pretty high. It's set at 6.5 goals. The series lines for both these on CoolBet, it's actually dead even, minus 110 each across the board. So they're saying a 50-50 chance for either team to come out on top in this series. If we're looking at the lines, the Oilers are going back with their top-heavy line. They're rolling 29 and 97 together with Corey Perry at the right wing. And I think a lot of that has to do with the success of that line, too, right there, with Evander Kane, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Zach Hyman. They have a 76% expected goal share in 4 games in the playoffs in round 1 so far. So I think that a lot of that has to do with how good that second unit has been. And then if we're looking at the defense, they're still without Matthias Ekholm, which is a big loss on their back end. They're rolling with Nurse and Bouchard as the first D pairing again. And then we got Calvin Pickard in net over Stuart Skinner. There were some rumblings that they might go back to Skinner to start this series, but it's been confirmed by Coach Knobloch that Pickard's getting the net in game 1. On the flip side for Vegas, William Karlsson stays on that first line with Jack Eichel and Mark Stone. They've done really well. They're 3-0 in terms of goals, actual goals for and against in the playoffs in 17 5-on-5 minutes. So they've had, a shutout in their minutes so far. And that second line too, I mean, it's tough. There's no Pavel Dorofeev. He's been ruled out for game 1. I've heard that there's rumblings he might not be able to play the entire series, which will be a big loss. He was a huge help on that right wing on the second line. He had 35 goals this year. And then also on their power play, he had 13 goals on the power play. So again, a big loss for Vegas. They're diversifying the D pairs again, splitting up Theodore Pietrangelo and Hannafin, and then Aiden Hill in net. Tyler, what do you got on these? There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, well, to start with Edmonton, I love the stat you bring up about Kane, Nugent Hopkins, and Hyman. Like Chris Knobloch's kind of found something there ever since Evander Kane was able to rejoin the lineup. So I love keeping them together. Obviously, we all love seeing Draisaitl and McDavid play together. So their top 6 is looking pretty dangerous. And they've even got depth scoring. I know there were a lot of goals scored in that first round series with the LA Kings, but like Trent Frederick scored, Adam Henrique scored, Connor Brown scored, Matthias Janmark scored. He's matched his goal total from the regular season. So you got to love the depth scoring. That's why the Edmonton Oilers are through to round number 2. And we kind of hope we get a mix of what we saw in that Oilers series and what we saw in the Vegas-Minnesota series, like maybe some high-scoring games, which we saw in Kings versus Oilers, maybe some overtime games, which we saw in Minnesota and Vegas. I kind of hope those 2 first-round series mesh here. And Pavel Dorofeev is just such a huge guy to not have in your lineup. If you're Bruce Cassidy, like, no disrespect to Keegan Colasar. I love the guy, but I love him when he's playing on my 4th line, maybe not on my 2nd line. So maybe Victor Olofsson gets a little lift if he's playing well, and maybe that Hurdle-Sod Colasar line is not really working out, but still got to love the Vegas depth to bring in a guy like Olofsson when Dorofeev's hurt, or to bring in a guy like Pearson like they did during the first round. Bruce Cassidy has a lot of good weapons at his disposal, and this should be a fun series that should go 7.
You think it'll go 7? Yeah, I kind of am on the same edge there. And I think, too, to your point about the Dorofeev injury, like the issue is not only subtracting that player from your lineup, but then it's slotting players who maybe aren't well positioned to be in that spot. Like you mentioned, a Keegan Colasar. He's probably great on your bottom 6 on your 4th line, but he's not necessarily a guy you want to consistently put in your top 6 and depend on for scoring production. So I think someone like Dorofeev, when he's out of the lineup, that's a big, big loss to them. And it's on the other guys, right? It's on Mark Stone. It's on Jack Eichel. It's on Ivan Barbashev, who started the series on the top line and is now on the 3rd line. It's on those guys to kind of pick up the slack a little bit and get that offensive production. Because when you're going against 97, when you're going against 29, you're going to need to put pucks in the back of the net. And it'll be interesting to see how Edmonton's defense holds up against this Vegas Golden Knights lineup. Even without Dorofeev, they're still pretty strong offensively, especially from their back end. They're able to generate offense. They got guys like Shea Theodore, Noah Hannafin. Even Petro's able to generate some offense. White Cloud, like they have guys on that back end that can put the puck in the back of the net or make plays out of the D zone. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Well, yeah, you'd give the advantage to Vegas on the back end. You'd give the advantage to Vegas in between the pipes with Aiden Hill. And even though he kind of had a mediocre first round and still got by the Minnesota Wild, but like those 2 advantages alone should get you by the Edmonton Oilers and get you into round number 2. But then all of a sudden, Draisaitl or McDavid has a ridiculous 3, 4, 5-point game and gets the Oilers a win here, gets the Oilers a win there. I really think this is going to be a seesaw battle of a series. But yeah, it at least goes 6. But I'm obviously hoping for a game 7 OT.
Definitely. And these two teams own the Pacific, right? You look at last year, Edmonton made it out of the West. The year before, Vegas made it out of the West. So these are the teams that have, for the last couple of years, really been the class of the Western Conference. So it'll be interesting to see, which one of these makes it out and if they're able to then take it up another notch against the winner of the Stars Jets series coming up, which starts tomorrow. So I think we've got two great games on the dockets tonight. If I'm going to make my series predictions, I'm going to go Washington Capitals in 7. I think they have to win it on home ice. I think it's going to be tough to win it in Carolina. So I got Washington in 7. And then I got Edmonton in 6. I think Edmonton's going to take care of business. I think McDavid, McDavid was first in scoring in that first round, and it felt like he didn't even have the greatest series. So, I mean, that's just how ridiculous this guy is, and that's the standard that we put him to. But I could see him taking it to another level. And I do like Vegas, but I think Edmonton, I think it's just their year maybe, and I like Edmonton in 6.
I like that. I just had to double check my picks, so I didn't maybe do anything wrong. But I have Vegas in 7. I love the Edmonton pick. Like, I want to see McDavid and Draisaitl get back to the conference final as much as anybody. So maybe Edmonton gets by, but I'm going with the Golden Knights in 7, and I'm going with Alex Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals in 6 games. I do think they get a little revenge. I know the Canes have beat them in the past in the playoffs, but I like Washington to reach the Eastern Conference final.
I love that. And I kind of agree with you, right? As I mentioned, like, I just think, I don't know if they're going to be able to do it in Carolina. I like the boldness of the pick, but we'll see how the series plays out. But that's all the time we have here. Snipes and Insights. We got 2 games tomorrow. We got the first game of the Jets and Blues series. It looks like there are some guys who are potentially getting back into the lineup. So we'll see as that more information comes out tomorrow morning and when we do our show at 4 p.m. And then we have game 2 of that Panthers Maple Leaf series. Who will be in net? Will the Panthers be able to even the series, or will the Leafs take a 2-0 series lead back to Florida? It's Keith. It's Tyler. Snipes and Insights. Thanks for coming.